Welcome to Convene Connect, where we connect you with great leaders and leadership ideas. Convene is a community of business and ministry leaders who meet monthly in peer-to-peer advisory teams. Together, facilitated by a Convene chair, we help you achieve strong business performance and eternal impact. Let's join the CEO of Convene, Greg Leith, and his guest for today's conversation.
Well, welcome to the Convene podcast. I'm with my friend, John O'Leary, who's in Missouri, in the middle of the country. And John is married to his wife, Beth. They have 4 children. He owns a business that's taken him all over the world doing something he loves. But in the time frame when he was 9 years old, he had something happen that altered his life trajectory very significantly. And John, your story has leadership lessons. And so we're going to talk about that. Welcome to the Convene podcast.
Greg, I have been on this little podcast tour for the last couple of days, and not one of them has introduced me as their friend. We became friends by the end of the 10 minutes or the 60 minutes, whatever it was, but you used that word and you used it sincerely. So, man, I'm honored to be on with my friend. I love the work you do, and I'm honored to serve your people.
Thanks. We're gonna have a great conversation, and it's a little bit uncanny where it's going to come from, because maybe people thought, your business died, that was your trauma. Or maybe they thought you had a family issue, that was your trauma, but your trauma was quite much more than the average person experienced or will experience. So why don't you share with us what happened in the garage at your home when you were 9 years old that you didn't expect?
Yeah, I will. And I'm going to begin by saying, and I never expected anything positive could have ever come out of this. Like, it is impossible for something beautiful to come out of what we're about to talk about. And yet God shows up again and again and again, not only in my story and our experiences, but in our collective experiences throughout life. So to answer your question, about a week before this event, I was watching in my backyard as kids behind me were playing with fire and gasoline. And what they would do is strike a match and throw it into a little puddle of gasoline, and they would dance to life. And I assumed if they can do it, get away with it, so can I. So on a Saturday morning with my father at work, he was a small business owner. My mother was out with a couple of my sisters. The house was all mine. I made my way into the garage, bent over a can of gasoline, lit a piece of cardboard, bear hugged this container, and tilted it toward that cardboard, waiting for the liquid to come out, just like I'd seen kids doing. And right now, before I even tell you what happens, I think most of your listeners have a sense. It's important to also not judge what's about to happen and think like, well, they're talking about a fire story. Man, I'm talking about a leadership story here. That's what we're talking about. We become like the voices we pay attention to. We become like the people we do life, who we party with, who we sit next to, who we dine with, who we read from. Choose wisely. I think Convene does this better than any other organization I'm familiar with. It guides us forward appropriately, but be aware we become like the voices we give attention to. And as important leaders, others are looking up to you as the example. There's some kid looking over the hillside at what you're doing. Give them something that is worthy of being modeled in a marketplace that rarely will. That weekend, parents are gone. I'm over this can. Before the liquid comes out, the fumes come out. It creates this massive explosion. It splits the metal can in two, picks up the 9-year-old boy, and Greg had launched me 20 feet against the far side of the garage. That's the starting point of this wild story.
Wow. And I think you bring up an incredible point, which is we can be shocked by the enormity of that story. It was cardboard and a match and a can of gasoline. But maybe somebody's listening who thought, if I just buy this stock, or if I just start this company like this, or if I just hire this person, if I just do this thing, everything will be fun. And it turned out it wasn't so fun. So you spent 5 months in the hospital after that moment. You endured dozens of surgeries. You underwent years of physical therapy. What were you thinking as a 9, maybe then became 10-year-old during that time?
I'll play the micro and the macro. The micro thought was, as I'm eventually rushed to the hospital and laying on a hospital bed, surrounded by staff, never met any of them. I'd never been in a hospital bed before, not once. The only thought going through my mind as a child was, oh my gosh, my dad is going to absolutely kill me when he finds out. Like, I knew my father's wrath was coming to finish me off. And so that's what I was focused on as I hear his voice down the hall yelling at some nurse, "Where's my boy John?" And she brings him back into the room. This fellow executive, pulls back the curtain, marches in like he learned in the army, points down and says to me, John, look at me when I'm talking to you. So I looked up and my father says, I have never been so proud of anyone in my entire life. And my little buddy, today, this morning, I'm simply glad to be your dad.
Wow.
And then my father says, I love you.
Wow.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
Wow.
And just like you're saying, wow, I remember not saying, wow. I was saying to myself, Greg, oh my gosh, nobody told my dad what happened. Like clearly this man does not know I just burned down his house. But over to my right in my office, there's a picture of the prodigal son. It's painted. I think it's a knockoff, but it's a Rembrandt cheap knockoff painting. And it's this picture of this big old royal garb dad putting both of his big old meaty arms around his son, just bringing him back, loving him forward. And to me, that signifies not only what I long for in my dad, and I'm not talking about my earthly one. I'm talking about God our Father. Like I need that kind of grace because I'm a train wreck so often. But it's also what I experienced as a 9-year-old boy from my earthly father. I did everything in the world to mess it up. I burned down the family home, burned myself, should have died. And my dad comes marching into this room filled with mercy and grace and love. And that did not make the next 5.5 months in hospital easy. Like what does? But I think his love on day one, on moment one of day one, made the journey possible. The way we walk into a room changes that room. And my dad walked in as the embodiment of Christ. It changed me. And I think it changed those who are witnessing this love. That's what love does, man. It doesn't just change the two engaged. It changed everybody else who's watching. That's what I was thinking in the micro. My dad's going to kill me. In the longer sense, during that time and during that season, what I was really thinking is, if and when I get out, I will not be defined by this thing. I will not be scarred for the rest of my life. I will not be broken and battered and beaten. I will prove to this ugly world and to this ugly reflection that I'm enough. And so a child made a commitment to never look back, which sounds like, wow, how healthy. And there's some wisdom in that. But man, if you don't look back, you also don't learn. And so I never looked back and I just kept moving forward and racing up the ladder. And, we can talk later on about what eventually changed, but I was never going to be defined by my scars.
Wow. That's incredible to think that at 9 and or 10 years old, you were thinking that deeply. That's phenomenal. Where did that come from? Mom and dad's training?
Probably partially. I also think it came from a kid who was athletic and popular and funny and was going to play shortstop for the St. Louis Cardinals, recognizing that all those things might have been taken away from him. But my desire to still achieve and still be known and be loved and be seen could not be. I thought I could still become something in my life in spite of what I'd endured. And so part of it was the training and the reckoning that my mother gave me on things like you can play the piano, you can write again. But part of it was just dogged determination to hide the scars. And in the more macro version, Greg, my belief system was that I would not be defined by this tragedy, that I wanted to step away from the shadow of a kid in a wheelchair without fingers, without skin on the majority of his body. I'm scarred from my neck to my toes. And so my goal in life as I came out of the hospital was I will not be defined by being a burn survivor, which I know it sounds probably like healthy, like good, man, move forward in life, which is mostly true. But also at the end of the day, if you can't learn the lessons that you're experiencing in life, you can't become a better version through the difficulties you've overcome. And so I went back to school and onward through high school and college and started my own little business and become a hospital chaplain. But all of that was to prove to the world that I was enough, because in my heart of hearts, I knew I wasn't.
Wow. That is so huge. If somebody listening who's running a company could sit with you for lunch or coffee, what would you tell them as they're juggling all their responsibilities, and maybe they're not seeing the main thing as the main thing, or the most important thing as the most important thing? Maybe they're too angry at their team. Maybe they're wishing the market could be better. Maybe they're a personal investor. They wish they hadn't invested in something that went south. What would you say if they said, gosh, your life seems to be focused on things that matter. It feels to me like I get upset about things that don't matter. What would you say to them?
So I'm gonna long-windedly answer your question. We are now 39 for 39 when people interview us as a speaker for their organization, comparing us to other speakers. So I promise you guys, I am going somewhere with this. Don't hang up on me quite yet. And you might be thinking, well, why? What mighty stories do you share with these great executives and HR directors when you share with them your wisdom on why they should choose you versus X and Y and C and everybody else they have access to? And why I think we are as successful and that as we are, because this gets back to your lunch question, is when they jump on the Zoom, I don't tell them anything about me. I sit back and I ask them about them and then about their business and then about their lives. And then, so you do a yearly conference, huh? Why? In past, well, what does success look like? What's the theme this year? What are you looking to accomplish? If I see you at the end of it and you give me a hug and you said, John, this year was awesome because, what would you say? And the whole 29 minutes and 58 seconds is about me asking layup questions to them. So I know their heart, I know their lives, I know what's working, what's not, and what success looks like. And by the very, very end of it, they're looking at their watches thinking, I think we've got our guy. And the reality is I've told them nothing about their guy, nothing about the message, nothing about the messenger. I've taken interest in their life and in their work and in things that matter to them. So the reason I began, Greg, that's the answer to your question with that story is if one of your executives say, hey, O'Leary, you want to have lunch? I would try to say yes. They would probably leave there knowing less about my life than they did before they walked into that lunch meeting. Because like as a hospital chaplain, you're not trained to eulogize or evangelize or motivate. You're trained primarily to sit back, put your arm around someone and listen. In other words, it sounds a lot like what Jesus did at the well. We think as executives, now I'll begin hopefully answering your question, that we need to have the right words and the right strategy, then the right tactics and the right pro forma, all guiding us forward to the right results. And there's something powerful about having the right heart before you do any of the other stuff. And so I would tell my new friend at lunch, number one, they're picking up the bill because I'm just not doing it this time because they got all the words this time. And secondly, I would remind them to focus on the things that are eternal and that matter. Most of the time, if you really look at your life and look at the things that give you headaches and cause you to wake up in the middle of the night and cause you to clench your fist and say, why would they vote that? Why? Or why did she say that? Or why that tweet? If you can then shut your eyes again and say, and will it matter in 6 months? Almost always, not universally, but almost always the answer is no. Would this matter in a decade? Would it matter in 2? Will it matter to my grandchildren who I'm building this for in the first place? Almost always the answer is no. And so I try to just remind friends, slow down, pray, pause, sit with people at the well, love them, go more for relationship than results. And if you pursue that doggedly, I promise you the results will follow.
I like it. I like it. So you wrote a book, I think, is it Ignite? Is that right?
So there's been like 3 little books that I've rolled out. The first one by my mom and dad is called Overwhelming Odds.
Okay.
And my dad with Parkinson's disease and all these other struggles wrote this book and it became a bestseller. Then I wrote a book about 10 years later called On Fire. And that rolled out into the marketplace. And then about 8 years after that, we wrote a book called In Awe. And so those are the 3 books that are out there right now. And the one that most people ask me about is On Fire, kind of like the middle one. That's what they even did the film on. So like Soul on Fire, the movie, draws its inspiration from the book On Fire.
So 7 choices to ignite a radically inspired life is the On Fire book. But speak to leaders who are listening, maybe 1 or 2 principles from the 7. We won't give them all the 7.
Right.
They can buy the book. But how about a couple things that you would say really apply to CEOs running a company who are feeling maybe pressure of juggling multiple priorities? They're maybe feeling like, ooh, I can't seem to figure out AI. They're struggling with faith integration. Their vice president just quit.
Yes.
Speak to them with a couple principles from the 7.
How about I just kind of borrow one, and it's lessons that my dad taught me. My dad is my favorite subject matter, I think, in the book, and a masterful executive and a better human being. And I think those things usually are intertwined. They convene as one typically. And 2 critically important lessons my father taught was a connection between humility when you have the world by the tail. When top line revenue is beyond what you expected, bottom line profitability is far greater than you imagined. Like all that stuff is working. Oh yeah, you're killing it. But my dad never was identified by what he was doing professionally. It never was him. He just was grateful for the opportunity of serving. So that was him when he was successful. And then his kids, I'm one of 6, and I watched as that all was taken away from him. Parkinson's disease arrived on the scene. He was unable to drive, unable to walk, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to work, unable to earn, lost everything financially. And even in the midst of agony in more ways than one, he was joyful in all things. He was humble. He was grateful. He was connected to those around him and he inspired. But he may have done his best work when he lost the ability to speak. It's amazing when you talk how too often you use your mouth. My dad went about a decade without being able to, which means he could just listen. And I see you nodding and reflect and give language through his eyes. I always wonder, what did Jesus's eyes look like? I think I saw them in my dad's. And man, they look tender and wise and loving. So I would share a little bit of that knowledge that my dad imparted on us. One way he lived that is he had a process of gratitude. And I know this sounds so like, oh, dude, that's so flighty and trippy, and I don't have time for this. I implore your leaders, make time each morning to get into the word, to sit in periods of pause, to reflect on what it means in your life, and to make a list of things that you've got that no market correction can take away from you.
I love that.
I mean, it's key. My dad did that for his life and was grateful in every season. So I would remind people the power of that presence and choice. The second thing, using that word of choice, it's a story my dad taught me when I was ready to go back to school. So Greg, this is about 18 months in. I've been out for a while, left this bushy-tailed baseball playing kid, class clown, and now I'm coming back a year and a half later, still in a wheelchair, still struggling, and still unsure of who I am or whose I am or what my life will look like. And I don't want any part of any of it. So I keep asking my dad, why me? Why me, Dad? Why me? And Dad has answered this question a million times. And this time he answers it by standing up, walking toward the bedroom door, shutting the door, walking back toward me, kneeling down, putting his hands on my thighs, looking me in the eyes and saying, John, dang it, why not you? This terrible thing has happened in your life. And if you want to be a victim to it for the rest of your life, have at it. No one will blame you. You've been through the worst, man. You lost all your skin in that burn event. No one will blame you. Or you can roll into every room, or maybe one day walk into every room as a victor. And every room you step into, people will look up in awe, not at what you overcome, but how you lead your life today. And then he said, John, victim or victor, your choice. My dad leans forward, kisses me on the cheek, stands back up, walks out of that room, pulls the door shut. And now there's a 10-year-old boy seated, some bandages on, fingers still missing, getting ready for school tomorrow morning, trying to figure out which one. And I think that choice, man, like that choice, Greg, is one I had to wrestle with as a fifth grade kid, but it's one your leaders need to wrestle with every day as markets correct, as employees say, you know what, I know you hired me and overpaid me, but I'm out. As spouses walk out, as children disappoint, as health scares show up, as life happens, then what? And ultimately, you have agency. You can give it away to the president. You can give it away to AI. You can give it away to headlines or your neighbors who say, it's never been worse, man. Look at this. Never been worse. Fine. Or like my dad, you can look east in the morning. You can watch the sun rise. You can take inventory of the things that no correction could ever take away from you. And then you can get up and go after it. Your choice, not mine. Victim or victor. So those are a couple really key lessons from the book and two incredibly important lessons from my dad.
Wow. I think it's incredible that God placed you in the family he did, in potentially in his sovereignty, understanding what would happen to you. Imagine if you were in a different family without this amazing father. And it's actually quite fascinating that you got to care for him.
Isn't that the most ironic thing, man? Two
Yeah.
stories that I
Wow.
never share, but the first is when he had his second house fire, my mom and dad lost their home a second time. And their son, who wanted to prove to the world that he was enough, became a carpenter, contractor. And I was able to grab my tools and grab my crews and head out to my mom and dad's house and build it back. No cost, mom and dad. And so it was the worst quarter in record for my little business back in the day. And it was the most meaningful work I've ever done still.
Gosh.
That's cool. Got to build my childhood home. And the second thing is to lay with my dad as he's taking his last breaths, to be with him in this season of struggle, to see a smile still on his face as a man who is grateful for all of life is now grateful for the next step into life. So yeah, you brought up, John, how blessed, man, to enter into that family. And I would imagine most of your viewers and listeners, either they were born into a similar family or they had a mentor in their life who stepped into them and said, there's a better way to do life. Let me walk with you.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of us who have received, and if you're listening to my voice, that is you. Do not kid yourself and say, no, John, you missed it. I built all this. That's a lie. You haven't, but we have. And you've been blessed to have some really influential people around you who've shown you the path forward. Thank God for them. But also recognize in walking that path, your job now is to look back and draw forward people who might need a hand, who might need some encouragement. They might need a little bit of your wisdom, a little bit of your money, a little bit of your time. And rather than hoarding, our call is to give it back freely. I learned that from my dad, and I try to model it as a son. I speak at burn camps frequently, so not just big organizations. My favorite work is actually for free in prisons and burn camps with those individuals who did not have the family structure I do and did. And I try to be that structure for them. I try to love them, man, as Jesus loved us at the well.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. I'm kind of reflecting on that Bible verse that talks about let not the rich man say of his riches that it's him. Let not the mighty man say of his it's him, but let him who boasts of this that he understands and knows me, that I am the Lord who exercises justice and loving kindness on the earth. But yeah.
I mean, drop the mic. I mean, let's go to the tattoo parlor and get that on the right bicep. It's a beautiful, beautiful gift of wisdom that we read over or we hear, and then we move back to work. And it's like, yeah, what do I really need to do today, though? I'm glad I did that pre-work good, but now I need to do real stuff.
Yeah.
And what you just said there, Greg, like that's the real stuff.
That is. Well, be remiss if we didn't talk about something happening on October 10th, which is Sony Pictures decided to make a movie out of your life. And it's going to be called Soul on Fire. Is that right?
It is right.
How can people find out about it and support it?
Well, first of all, thank you. And where they can find out about it is to go to johnolearyinspires.com. So that's my name, johnolearyinspires.com. And on that website, there's a direct link to where you can learn and watch that film. We are booking theaters around the country and around the world. We're booking them ahead of time, so you can have access to it up to 2 weeks ahead of time. You can bring your team, bring the people you worship with, or have dinner with ahead of time, which is super cool. Or later on, if you want to just take the kids or a couple people you work with, you can go to theaters in your community. And so we have links to all the places where that will be taking place. If you have any questions, you can email me. I'll guide you through the process. We're trying to create a movement here for good, man. I spent a lifetime knowing I had no value. And it was only because God kept walking forward with me and using other ordinary people, some extraordinary, but most relatively typical, to keep guiding this little boy forward. And this movie, when people leave, they will recognize that heroes are alive and well. Not just the kind you watch with Superman wearing tights and a cape, but in business owners and in admin and in spouses and in children and in each of us. We're called toward greatness, just not the greatness of the world, the greatness to serve. Just join me, man. Go to johnolearyinspires.com, click the link to the site, and let's go to the movie together.
That sounds great. I'll be there, and we'll inform all of our Convene world that they should be there too. And we're very grateful for you spending time with us today, and we look forward to our relationship continuing in the future.
Well, I knew Convene when they were. I remember the good old days. You've grown since then. And the best thing about your growth is not just the impact of that growth in the lives of those who are part of Convene, but the fact that you all recognize where it came from. It's not just your incredible wisdom and your leadership and the way you've guided this thing forward in the strategic plan. It's the fact that God's hand is over this, guiding it and us forward. And so we have that same conviction in our film. We have that same conviction in our business. And I look forward to doing life with guys who are equally yoked. So Greg, thank you for your leadership, man. It clearly is mattering.
Sweet. Thanks for being with us. And we'll look forward to seeing you surreptitiously on the screen October 10th.
Look forward to it. I'll wave.
See you later.
Thanks for joining us at Convene Connect. We know leadership can be challenging and sometimes even exhausting or lonely. That's why Convene exists. We help you go faster, further, and get to the end goal more fulfilled as you grow an exceptional business, become a higher impact leader, and honor God. Imagine achieving all this with a community of your peers. If you're part of a Convene team, thank you. If you'd like to find out more about being a Convene member or leading a Convene team, go to convenenow.com.